All right. Hello, everyone, and welcome to today's video where we're going to be talking about why you will never figure out who you are. Okay? So it's my intention with this video today to, number one, take the pressure off everyone out there who feels like they are trying to figure out and find out who they really are. They're trying to find their authentic self. They're trying to find their true nature. All of these things, their purpose, their passion, who they're supposed to be, what they're supposed to be doing, and feeling like they're never finding it. Feeling like there's constantly this internal, like, is this who I am? Is this what I like? Is this what I want? And also, so I really want to just kind of validate that experience, that it can feel really like there's supposed to be this answer, or supposed to be this moment where we have done the plant medicine, or we've done the spirit journey, or we have the counseling session, or we've done our inner child work and our processing work and all of these things enough that we eventually come to this place where we like know who we are and we fully understand ourselves. And from that moment forward, we just have this clear, authentic path, right? And this is something that's talked about so much in the spiritual community and the self-help community and the personal growth communities, is just this like, be your authentic self, be your true self, step into your real self, step into your real power. And when you're being authentic and when you're being yourself, you're gonna know exactly what to do all the time. You're gonna manifest abundance, you're going to manifest your community, everyone's going to love you, and everything's going to be amazing, right? And then we can constantly feel like that's not happening for us. We can't find our partner, we can't manifest abundance, we never feel like we know what we're doing with our career, and all of these things, and we're thinking like, how do I find my true self? How do I know who I'm supposed to be? How do I know who I really am? And I'm doing all the things and I still don't know. So if you're feeling like that, I hope that this video will help calm those anxieties and maybe bring some context into why that's not necessarily how things actually work, and to take the pressure off, like really take the pressure off, that you're supposed to like have this super clear, super abiding self-awareness that you arrive at, you understand who you are, and then you can live authentically for the rest of your life. And then the second thing I want to talk about is how, again, so much of figuring out what is true for us and what's real for us and what's authentic to us isn't going to be an intellectual exercise. Isn't going to be something that we think our way into, and we're not going to think our way out of our conditioning a lot of the times. And because, again, so much of the reason that we are not already living authentically, the reason that we feel like we don't know who we are, the real reason that we're struggling to feel that we're living our right path and doing what's right for us and all of these things, is because we're disconnected from our emotional sense, we're disconnected from our bodies, we're disconnected from understanding how our feelings work and how they communicate to us, and therefore we're living in our heads, we're living in our intellect, we're living in our conditioning, and that can be programmed, right? The intellect and our intellect can be programmed. Whereas our bodies and our emotions are always going to speak to us when something is out of alignment. They're always going to hurt, okay? And I feel like we can intellectualize our way out of understanding that we're in pain, and we can intellect our way into believing that the pain that we're in is a good thing, is a thing that's helping us, is a thing we should be doing, is a thing we deserve because we're doing what we're doing wrong, but it's the right path, like all of these things. Whereas when we really learn to like get into what is my pain actually trying to tell me, a lot of the time the pain is trying to say, this isn't really real for you. And then why that's so difficult, because our conditioning is so strong and our minds have been so programmed from such an early age in our lives that to really see our programming is like one of the most difficult things we'll ever do. Okay? So the first thing that I just want to say is that when we're thinking about knowing ourselves and becoming aware of ourselves and being self-aware and finding our authentic path, number one, I think it's a myth that spiritual teachers and self-help gurus and all these people say that when you're living authentically, you just have this like permanent joy. Okay? I kind of just want to be real about this because I feel like we're setting ourselves up to not be able to enjoy what life actually is because we're setting an expectation of it being something that it's never going to be. So we're constantly disappointed. And like I say, and it's not even that actual life is so terrible. It's just that when we have these unconscious or subconscious or even conscious expectations of life that don't align with how life actually is, we're always going to suffer, okay? And like I said, it blocks our capacity to enjoy what is actually enjoyable. It blocks our capacity to enjoy what actually is, which again may not be our fantasy, but that doesn't necessarily mean it's bad. That doesn't necessarily mean it's painful. That doesn't necessarily mean it's something we can't enjoy. It just means when we have these expectations of it's supposed to be this way and then it isn't, we're always going to be suffering, right? Like that is always going to cause suffering. So like I said, I just want to kind of offer that this idea that we're supposed to discover our authentic selves and then live blissfully, happily ever after, always after that we're supposed to find out who we really are, and then from there we're never going to struggle with our identity ever again. We're never going to struggle with our relationships ever again. We're always going to feel inspired in our careers. We're always going to understand what our bodies want and what our bodies need and what our emotions are telling us. And we're just going to have this like easeful, graceful experience of like joy and everything just flowing to us and nothing being difficult ever again. And I just want to say that like that's completely unrealistic. That is not how life works. That's never how life is going to work. We are always going to face things that we have no idea are coming. We are always going to face challenges. We are always going to have things come up that we don't expect. We are always going to have growth barriers. Because again, I know the New Age community likes to tell us that we're completely in control of our own experience and that we manifest everything that comes to us and everything is a result of our vibration and our thoughts and blah, 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 blah. But this is not reality, okay? Like, we live in a very complex reality. We are interacting with over 7 billion other human beings who are all making individual choices. We are interacting with a world that has weather patterns and animals and bugs and all of these things that are all operating in their own patterns. We have a solar system that has gravitational pull on our planet and changes the ways the ocean function. Like, you see what I'm saying? Like, to think that we are completely in control of our own experience is naive because reality is huge. Reality is complex. We are tiny little pin drops of like nothing in significance in comparison to how big reality is. So I understand the desire to believe that everything is this law of attraction and nothing comes into our reality unless we call it in because we're a vibrational match and blah, 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 blah. I totally understand the desire to believe that. I understand that on some level. Like, right, I'm not saying that that's totally untrue. I know that, of course, we have some control. Of course, how we interact with the world around us changes the way the world interacts with us, right? Like how we see things, how we speak to people, how we interact, the things that we choose to engage in, the things we choose not to engage in, the things we choose to think about, and those thoughts influence our actions, influence who we're around, influence where we are and how we are, culture, all of these things. We have some control there. And like, think about it, right? Like, all of us were born into very specific conditions that automatically set our lives on a path that we could not fundamentally alter. Like the color of your skin, the zip code you were born in, or the place on the planet you were born in, the language you learned, the access to education you had, the conditioning you had as a child, all of these things were setting in place the experience you were going to have. And it was shaping your capacity to have access to other experiences, right? There is so much we don't have control over. So again, yes, take care of your vibration, whatever that means to you. Be someone who looks for the bright side, whatever feels good for you. But to understand that, again, that when we get so obsessive about, like, what did I do to cause that? What was my thought that was causing that? What was my vibration? But like when we start to look for these patterns in reality of maybe painful or hurtful things that happen to us, and we're starting to nitpick our own internal environment as though that's the cause for everything, that's going to cause anxiety, because that's your emotional guidance system telling you that's not reality. That's not real. So again, it's not to say that we don't have impact. It's not to say that how we are and what we believe and how we're acting, that we're not affecting our own lives. Of course we are. But we don't have complete control. There are some things that are going to happen to you that are literally just because you were there at that time and that person decided to do that. It had nothing to do with your vibration. It had nothing to do with your internal state. You didn't manifest it. It happened because you were there and that was the circumstance and they made that choice. There is so much complexity to this reality. So again, this idea that we're gonna find our authentic self and then life is going to be heaven from there on out is a myth, because reality is so much more complex than just ourselves. We are not existing in a vacuum, only interacting with ourselves, and that's it, okay? The world is not human-centric. The earth is not human-centric. Again, so many of these spiritual teachings kind of hinge upon this idea that reality and everything that happens in reality is based on human thought or based on human emotion. And that is the pre-Galileo, the earth is in the center of the universe, the human is the center of the universe thinking, right? It's not reality. Human being and human thought has an effect on reality, has an effect on our actions, has an effect on the things that we do, but we are not the creators of reality. We are not the creators of our own reality. We have some influence, but we don't have complete influence. So again, it doesn't matter how much you know yourself. It doesn't matter how authentically you're living. You're never, ever, ever going to get to a place where nothing hard or challenging or confusing or difficult or whatever ever happens to you again. Because, again, this reality is big, it is complex, and we are always going to have things that are our blind spots. There are always going to be things that randomly happen to us. So again, is it random? Well, okay, if we were to go back forever and ever and ever, there's always a reason for something that happened, right? Someone's behavior is because they were raised in this certain way, and they were raised in that certain way because their parents were like this, and their parents were like this, and their parents like this, and we could go all the way back to the beginning of humanity where that first trauma happened, right? And how that was passed on all the way through the generations to lead to this person being in this situation where they got harmed in this specific way and then they behaved this certain way. There's always that, right? So I don't necessarily believe anything is random. Everything, we live in a cause and effect universe. But again, that cause and effect is so complex and so multifaceted that there are just going to be times where we're at the ATM and the guy behind us decides to mug us. And it's not because your vibration was low, and it's not because you created it. That person was having their experience, and you just happened to be there at that time, and that's what happened. So we don't want to over-assume our authority in this life to the point that it drives us into anxiety and depression and nitpicking our own behaviors because we're off track, right? There's a difference between taking responsibility for where you actually have responsibility and learning to accept that there are always going to be things in life we don't have control over, that there's going to be pain we can't see coming and that we can't stop. There's going to be challenge that we didn't see coming. There's going to be all these things, these experiences, that we're living our most authentic life. We're being as true to ourselves as we possibly can. We're being as honest. We're being as, taking as much responsibility as possible. And still, life is going to happen. Okay? Both of these things exist. So we need to be able to reconcile with, okay, where was my responsibility in that? And where was this just something that was hard and I have to emotionally process it and it just sucks and it just is? Okay? There's a difference between these two things. And like I say, if we overemphasize one over the other, we're always going to suffer because, again, it's not that everything is random and we have no control and we shouldn't bother taking any responsibility and everything is just happening to us and we're just victims to life completely. It's not that, right? If we go down that rabbit hole, we don't take any responsibility, we're going to suffer. But again, we go too far the other way, trying to take responsibility for things that aren't our responsibility, that trying to take control over things that we don't have control over, we're also going to cause ourselves to suffer. So we want to be in the middle. We want to be pragmatic. We want to say, okay, these are the things that I have control over. These are the things that I don't. And how do I make the best with what I've been given, right? That's our real power. So that's the first thing. If you're starting to get into that like anxiety, depression, I'm literally afraid to think my own thoughts because I believe and I've been told by the spiritual community that absolutely everything in my life happens because of me. The reason that feels so terrible is because it's not true, right? There's your number one, figure something out about yourself. It might sound intellectually good, right? So this is a good example of something that's conditioning that our intellect would like to believe, that sounds good, but that our bodies and our emotions are telling us isn't actually true. Okay? When we get into that hyper-vigilant, controlling, anxiety, depression, like I said, we're nitpicking the shit out of ourselves and everything that we're thinking and everything that we're vibrating and all of these things because we're trying to get to this heaven and we're thinking that everything that's hard that's happening to us is because there's some misalignment in our thought or in our process or whatever. That's your emotional guidance system being like, no, that's not reality. Okay? The pain you're in and whatever you're is not because your vibration is wrong. It's not because you're thinking the wrong thoughts. Sometimes we just have to process. That was a shitty thing that happened. I really wish it hadn't happened. It hurt. And just like, what did I learn from it? Right? Maybe I learned I just don't go to the ATM at night by myself anymore. Right? I didn't do anything to cause that. It wasn't my fault. I had gone to the ATM at that time of day by myself hundreds of times before and everything was fine. And then I happened to get mugged that one time and then maybe that just is okay. I'm not going to do that anymore. And it wasn't that you caused it. It wasn't that you called that into your reality. Like I said, you were just on the collision course with the person. And again, I understand we want to be like, yeah, but why? Why was I on the collision? But like, wasn't it something that I did to make it so that I was a vibrational match to that experience? And No, I don't think so. I think sometimes it is what it is. And like I said, I understand that can feel scary. It can feel very scary. Like, if I don't have control, then bad things are just going to happen to me and I don't have control over it. Yeah, sometimes that's going to be true. And so, but on the flip side, okay, when we embrace that, that means we can embrace the ups and downs of life. We can allow ourselves to actually enjoy the experience of sometimes we're just not going to know what we're supposed to be doing. Sometimes we're going to feel lost and confused. Sometimes we're going to feel like we're on our authentic path and we're not. Sometimes we're going to have moments where it's just fun and it's easy and things flow and we get it and that's great. And then other times where things are just challenging and hard and we're in a learning curve that we didn't know we were on. And rather than looking for and expecting this, I'm not truly being authentic and I'm not truly living my right life and I'm not really my true self until life is heaven and everything is easy. we can let that go and say, right now I am literally living to my best ability, my authentic reality. And the pain that I'm in, some of it might be because I'm not living my true self. Some of it might be my conditioning. Some of it might be, that's true. And some of it might just be the process of growth, the process of life, the process of where I was born and how I was born and the people around me and all of these things. And like, again, it's this constant dance of where can I take responsibility and make change in the things that are painful, and where do I have to just say, okay, well, this is just how it is right now. Maybe not forever. Maybe I'll have more control over it in the future. Maybe I'll be able to change it in the future. But right now, I can't do anything about this. So how do I comfort myself? How do I nourish myself? How do I do whatever I need to do in this moment for where I'm actually at? Okay? The second thing is I really want to express that I feel that your authentic true self is like a bar of soap, in the sense of the harder you try to squeeze it, the harder you try to pin down and nail down, this is who I am and this is what I am and this is me and this is my authenticity and this is who I'm going to be for the rest of my life and this is my right path and this is my right partner and this is my right way of being, the more it slips out of our hands. Right? In order to hold a bar of soap, that's wet, right? It's slippery. The best way is to hold it actually gently, to just hold it lightly. Because if we squeeze it too hard, it's going to slip out of our hands. If we open our hand too much, it's going to fall out, right? We want to have a light grip on ourselves. And we want to understand that, again, we are complex life. And we are always going to be learning, growing, changing, evolving, and expanding. And I like to think of it like we all have this core of truth, right? This kind of core of who we are, that when we sort of boil down our behaviors and we boil down our likes and we boil down our path, it all comes to these kind of core themes and these core patterns of who we are. But around that core is an ever-evolving, spiraling staircase. Or even you can think of it like fractals of patterns that continue to build out from the center, that become more and more and more complex and different and look more and more different from the core, the more complex they become. But again, we could always trace it back to that core. Okay, so who you are and what's right for you is very much, again, determined by this moment and where you are on your path. And it's not so much that you're going to find who you are and then that's who you are for the rest of your life. Because that is not how life works. Life, in order to be life, always needs to be something that can then be expanded upon. Everything you discover about yourself is going to be a foundation for the next level of you that can be created. Everything that you step into, that you discover, that you express, okay, is going to be something that then can be built on top of. And if you keep doing that, eventually you get to this thing that's so different from what this thing was. But does that mean that this thing was inauthentic to you? Of course not. It was completely authentic to you at the time for who you were at the time. And now 45 steps later, it looks totally different, right? Like that fractal has expanded so far away from that first step. It almost looks like a whole new different thing. Yet, if you look close enough, because it's the fractal, right? You'll see that that initial pattern is still in the 9th step out. Yes? But it's far more complex now. So that's the other thing that I just want to like put out there. That is just like, don't try to think that you're going to find a career or a relationship or even like how that relationship works or how to nourish your body or what your body looks like or how you dress or how you speak or any of these things. And then that's who you're going to be for the rest of your life. Okay? always make room for the idea that whatever is authentic to you in this moment might not be authentic to you 3 or 4 or 5 moments from now, right? You are not a static being. You are always going to be learning, growing, evolving, and changing. So this is why you can go on the plant medicine journey. You can have the spiritual shaman thing. You can have the meditation and realize, oh my gosh, this is who I am. This is what's authentic to me. This is what's real to me. And that is authentic and real and true for you as your next step, as your next expression, as your next thing. But don't cling to it, right? Because whatever that is, go into it fully, like completely embrace it. Let yourself fully experience that. And then when that is no longer authentic, when that is no longer who you are, when that what was once freedom starts to feel like a cage, you'll know you're ready for your next evolution, okay? And again, that didn't mean that where you were or what you were doing was wrong. It was perfectly correct. We have to understand that this life of self-expression, this life of self-awareness is a journey. There is no one and done. There is no arrival. You're never going to get there. Because again, that would be antithetical to how life works. In order to be alive, you have to be learning, growing, changing, evolving, and expanding. That's the one condition that all life shares. Growth. Okay? Yes, right? So someone just said, I love to let go and have the realization that nothing is static. And that's exactly it, right? That there's that core of who you are. Like, I feel like people will probably always be able, like, if they leave your presence for 10 years and then come and see you again, there's going to be things they recognize about you, right? There's going to be things that they recognize about the way that you are and the way you carry yourself and your energy and all these things. And then hopefully there's lots of things that they go like, wow, you're a totally different person. Both of these things exist at the same time. That core of who you are is always there. But the expression and how you live and how you evolve and grow and change is constantly changing, right? So like, I have had so many moments of realizing what was right for me, realizing what was true for me, realizing this is who I am and this is what's important to me and this is what's authentic to me. And I let myself fully engage in that, fully go there. Like, this is it. This is who I want to be. This is what feels right for me. And I go into it like it's going to be who I am for the rest of my life. Like, I fully commit. And then I always get to a place where I'm like, okay, I'm done with that. Right? It was totally what I wanted. It was totally authentic to me. It was totally real. It absolutely matched who I was. And now I'm done. And now I'm evolving to the next thing. And now I'm stepping into something else. And I think sometimes in our culture, right, we look at people who do that and think that they're flaky or think that they're undisciplined or that they lack consistency, right? This consistency word. And the reality is, again, it's not to say that we just like drop all of our responsibilities or become irresponsible or whatever, okay? But I hope that in 10 years, I look back on this content that I'm putting out now and think, oh, that was like really unevolved. You see what I'm saying? Like, I hope that I look back on who I am right now and think, like, that was great for me then. That was totally like the peak of where I was able to be in that moment. But like, I hope I look back and think like I have grown and changed and evolved so much since then. Because like, I look back on myself 10 years ago and I was totally at the peak of what I was capable of 10 years ago. I was speaking to what I could know about 10 years ago, what I was aware of, the complexity of everything. But I know so much more now. So it's like, again, like, I look back on my old YouTube videos and I don't think that was wrong. I don't think everything that I was saying was incorrect. Like, I don't take my videos down because I think it's a progression. But I have progressed so much since then. I have expanded my vision. I have expanded what I know. I have become deeper and more complex, and I've evolved, right? So you could even look back and say, like, the content on this channel has an arc, like a through line of consistency. Yeah? But it's so much more complex now than it was when I first started. And so that's kind of how it is with us as selves. We're always going to be ourselves, gaining complexity. We're gonna change. And sometimes that complexity is gonna look like a complete departure from something we were doing before. Sometimes that complexity is gonna look like an expansion on something we were doing before. But we have to allow ourselves to say, like, right, like this culture that wants us to be consistent, a consistent self, a consistent, this is who I am, and then I work this career for the next 65 years. I marry this person, and then that's it. For a lot of us, that's just never going to be how we are. That's never going to be who we are. That's never going to work for us. And I just want to validate that for you, okay? If you are sitting here feeling like, well, I thought I had found my authentic self, and then it changed, you were right. You're right. You were right then, and you're right now, okay? You are not a static thing, as Itzy said. There is no static in the, like, this is who I am, and this is how I'm always going to be. We are always going to be evolving. We are always going to be changing. So again, appreciating that you don't have complete control over your reality. There are going to be times where you just have to process that something was shitty and hard and not something you wanted, something you didn't see coming. Maybe you put yourself in that situation because it was like a growth thing, right? You're going for what you want and that's just what happened, or you just had a shitty experience, or you had a great experience that you didn't see coming, or whatever. And we just, again, we take as much responsibility as we can, and then when it starts to get nitpick and anxiety, that's how we know we're overtaking responsibility. Then we just have to process that we live in a chaotic universe, that from our perspective, because like I said, yes, everything has a reason. If we zoom out wide enough, we will always find that there's a reason for everything. But from our perspective and from what we can see and what we can know, there are just going to be times sometimes where we have to say, okay, that was just random, and it was just hard, and it was just not what I wanted, or something totally amazing, and it just happened, and I don't know, and it was just, I got blessed. Someone chose to be nice to me that day, whatever, and we got to ride with that. We got to be okay with the randomness that is going to happen, that we are going to just be caught up in a thing, in a pattern that was set 100 years ago, and we just happen to intersect with it. Okay? This reality is very complex. And anyone who's trying to sell you that they understand how it works so much that you can do a specific thing to be completely in control of your reality is lying to you. They're lying to themselves, because they want to believe that they have complete control to protect themselves from all pain, and they're lying to you because, of course, everyone wants to believe that we can be in complete control and then protect ourselves from all pain. We want to believe that. I think it's more pragmatic to accept that there are just going to be painful things sometimes, and learn how to process the pain, learn how to comfort ourselves, learn how to be okay with the fact that there are going to be things that happen that are out of our control, than constantly trying to get control that we're never going to have. Okay? Just putting that out there. That expectation versus reality. We will be able to enjoy life a lot more and be less afraid and less anxious and less depressed if we accept that there are some things we don't have control over. If we accept that there are going to be things that happen to us that we don't have any power to change, things that have happened to us that we don't have any power to change, and then we just take the responsibility of, like, what am I going to do with this? That's where our responsibility is. It's not, what am I going to do to avoid this? Well, how do I blame myself for it? Whatever. We accept there are just things that happen sometimes that we don't have control over, so what am I going to do about that? And where is my real power? And we'll know where our real power is because it's something we can actually do, right? Like just changing your thoughts and changing your vibration. And like I say, becoming so self-involved that you're constantly monitoring your own thoughts and your own feelings and to try to control your reality. It doesn't feel good. That's your emotional guidance system telling you sometimes we just need to learn to be okay with the fact that things are hurting and that things suck and that things are hard. And at the same time, there are going to be lots of things that happen to you that you have no control over that are great, that are awesome, that seem like a miracle. And we want to say, well, what did I do to manifest that? Nothing. You were in the right place at the right time. Someone decided to be nice to you. Like I said, it's just, there are some things that are just going to be random. So can we comfort ourselves and nourish ourselves and be there for ourselves in what we have control over and what we don't have control over, instead of trying to nitpick and think that we have complete control where we just don't, okay? And then holding yourself like a bar of soap, just tight enough to keep a grip on it, but understanding that the more we try and drill down, like, what am I? Who am I? Who is this person? Like, what is my real self? The more we're going to lose it because it's constantly evolving and changing. We can have a pretty good idea, and then, okay, this is the main thing of so much of living an authentic life is living from feeling first, intellect second. Okay, so I don't want to present this like we're supposed to stop thinking, that thinking is bad, or that the intellect is wrong, or that logic is somehow less than, it's not. Okay, logic and thinking and intellect are good. They are good tools. They are important tools. Without them, we are just as imbalanced as we are when we only rely on them. We want to put things in their correct order. Okay, so part of what is so hard about being an authentic self, being our true selves, because again, if we were raised in an environment where we were supported in being who we were, we wouldn't even be having to have these conversations. It would be natural and normal to be ourselves. It would be natural and normal to just be like, this is what interests me, I'm going to go for this, this is what I'm learning right now, these are my challenges, and this is the learning path that feels authentic to me, these are the things that are exciting to me, these are the things that are worth it to me for the challenge that I'm facing, and then these are the things that I don't really care about, these are the things that I don't want to do, these are the things I don't want to pursue, and so I'm not going to. And we would all just be living that life, right? So again, in a world where all humans are just accepted for their authentic selves, is not a world where everyone's just in bliss and doing their life all blah, blah, blah. It's pragmatically more a world full of people who are excited and enthusiastic about learning and growing, right? Who have passion, who have things they're interested in. And then, like I say, who willingly face challenges, who willingly go for things that are challenging to them and fail at things and try and go to create something that does not yet exist, that are working to change systems that currently exist because it's worth it, right? Like, that's more, I think, what I would like to say is a pragmatic view of someone who's living an authentic life. It's not someone who has just everything flowing to them and everything's easy and they feel light and happy and free all the time. It's someone who feels light and happy and free a lot of the time, and then also has challenges and struggles and things that are in their life right now that they're actively choosing because they know that it's their growth path. Okay? That's what an authentic life is. That it's like, okay, like, this is an area that's hard for me. This is an area, this is a thing I want to create that I'm not good at yet. This is a thing I want to change about society, and it's hard, but that challenge is worth it, right? Like learning how to do a handstand or challenging yourself in the gym. Right? It would be like if we're saying, if you're really working out authentically, it should just be easy. Everything you do in the gym should feel like nothing, and you should go in there and never sweat, and everything's just super easy, right? We would look at it a little bit, well, then how are you ever going to grow, right? If you're not going to the gym and challenging yourself, it's not working, right? So But people who go to the gym because they like love fitness and they like want to become stronger and they're practicing for a sport, like they're becoming, like they have like a purpose for it, right? Like that I'm becoming fitter, I'm becoming stronger, I'm getting faster in my runs, I'm getting stronger in my lifts, I'm whatever. You're facing this growth challenge that means something to you. It's worth it, right? You see do you see that metaphor? So it's the same thing with living our authentic lives. It's that, like, for the people who are at the gym because they love it and they're learning something, like like I say, they're strengthening their running because they love running and they love running races and they love getting a shorter time every time and all this stuff. It's hard and it's challenging, and there are going to be days they don't want to do it and it's not fun, and like that 5 a.m. sprint thing they have to do sucks, but it's worth it. And then there are going to be days where it just feels like flying and it feels amazing and the race day is awesome, and then other race days suck and all of these things, but overall it's like, this is what I want to be doing. I wouldn't trade it for the world. The shitty days, the awesome days, whatever, I show up for all of it because I want to be here. This is a thing I want to learn to be good at. That is what it looks like when we're living an authentic life. We are going to always, like, part of living an authentic life is going to be that we're like willingly going to places that challenge us, that we're willingly and consciously pursuing things that are hard sometimes, that we're not good at, that bring up challenge, that bring up our conditioning, that bring up our struggles, that, right? That's part of being an authentic human, is facing your challenges because it's worth it to you. That would be what it looks like for all of us. Okay? We would be evolving. We would be choosing to express and choosing to go after things that are difficult sometimes and choosing the less traveled path. That's what an authentic life is. It's not a life of just ease and flow and everything is easy and everything feels light and happy all the time. Okay? So when someone tells you, like, follow your bliss, and when you're living your right life, it'll all just be easy and flowy and all of these things, again, they're oversimplifying. Hopefully you will feel on some level. Okay, like, this is what I say about me anyways. When people ask me, like, how do you know that you're living your authentic life? When people ask me that, like, me personally, I know because when I stop and things are really hard and I'm challenged, my bottom line is, yeah, but I want this, right? Like, this is a growth path. This is the thing that I'm pursuing, and it's hard right now, and I'm confused, and I don't really get it, and it's challenging me, but it's true to me. It's growth I want. It's a challenge I want to face, and it's something I want to discover. And then there are other times where it's just like, these are just hard things. Like, I was born into a body that was sick, and so I didn't choose that. And then for a long, long time, I was a child, and it got worse and worse and worse because the people that were responsible for me didn't know what was going on and couldn't help me. And so it got worse and worse and worse and worse, and now I deal with the consequences of that. And so I don't get to choose to not have that. That's a part of my authentic path. It's hard and it's shitty sometimes, and I just choose to look at it like, okay, what am I going to learn from this? Right? And maybe I will never be fully healthy, and maybe I will never be fully able-bodied, and maybe I will never be pain-free, and maybe I will never have what other people have. And there are days where that's really shitty, and there are days where I'm like, okay, well, it is the life that I got, right? Because I have all these other things that are really great about my life. So we just embrace that there are just things, and we're embracing the growth and the challenge that feels authentic to us. So don't let anyone shame you, okay? Because I feel like this is kind of what happens in the positivity and the spirituality and the self-help and the self-improvement world, that when we're struggling, people automatically are like, okay, well, what are you doing wrong? Like, why are you struggling? What's the false thought you're having? What's the false... And sometimes it's just, this is just a hard thing. I'm just learning. It's just a shitty run day, right? Like, it's just a hard thing. I'm doing exactly what I should be doing. I'm totally exactly on the right path, and it's just hard. Like, the thing that I'm learning and the conditioning I'm breaking out of, or the thing I'm stepping into or whatever it is that I'm facing. There is no easy way. There is no not hard way. There is no non-painful way. This is my next growth step. This is my next growth path, and it's just hard sometimes. Okay, and we embrace that. And we just accept that. And we just say, this is the growth I'm choosing, or this is the growth that's kind of forced on me because of the conditions I was born into, and it fucking sucks sometimes, right? So again, having that compassion for ourselves on the days when we just don't want to, on the days when it just sucks, right? Because again, a lot of the time when we're like healing our conditioning and we're going into our shadows and we're going into our traumas and we're going into our physical stuff and our mental stuff and our emotional stuff, we're going to just be like, fuck, I wish this hadn't happened to me. I wish my caregivers hadn't been like that. I wish society hadn't been like that. Like, why did it have to be so horrible? And that is a very important phase that we're going to phase in and out of. That I, again, believe we need to learn how to support ourselves through instead of trying to convince ourselves not to feel that way or getting stuck there by kind of resisting it or not seeing the other side of the coin of where we do have power and control to make it better for ourselves, right? That like we all were given shit on some level. We were all traumatized on some level. We all didn't get what we needed on some level. We were all hurt on some level. So that needs to be validated. And that needs to be given lots of compassion. And on those days and those times when you can't find anything positive and you just want to feel sorry for yourself, do it. Fully allow yourself to go there. Don't try and coach yourself into like, well, how did I manifest it? Or maybe I chose it in a past life, or how was it good for me? Sometimes we really just have to let ourselves be upset about it. Be pissed at what happened, be upset at our caregivers, be upset at society, whatever it is. We go through that. And then eventually we get to a place where we're like, okay, it is what it is. I forgive them. They were just people. Where do I have my power now, and what can I do for myself now to support myself in being my true self now? How can I work with what I was given? What did I learn from that? How can this be something that helps me see who I really am through the contrast? It just depends on where you are on your path, right? It's not always that we should be trying to look for the positive and trying to look for the lesson and trying to look for our power. Sometimes we need to allow ourselves to go to that hard, like, this is just shitty and I'm just upset about it place. And we just have to have our inner child cry and be comforted and be nourished and told that we should never have had to go through that and that was shitty and it's not your fault. And then we get to a place where we say, okay, well, I want to take my power back now. I want to do something now. And that will happen naturally. Okay? And the last thing, finding who we truly are is going to be a lot about feeling and then thinking. Because again, so much of who we think we are, is based on our conditioning that is normal to us. Like, I was literally talking to someone this morning who was saying, like, understanding that my childhood was traumatic has been so hard for me because it was just normal for me. And I literally feel the exact same way. I've had 3 therapists that I've told my story to who burst into tears. And I was like, ugh. Like, I didn't even like tell you half the things that actually happened. And people are like, oh my God, I can't believe you like made it through that. And I was like, what do you mean? Like, isn't that just what childhood is? And apparently not, right? But for me, it was normal. And so when we're kind of, and so then, right, the blocks that I had, the things that I believed about myself that were really horrible and painful, the things that I believed I had to do with my life and that would make me worthy and that would make me good enough and that were really painful, right? The things that I was pursuing in my career, in my relationships, who I was trying to be, that was really painful for me. If I really checked in and was with my emotions, it would have been like, no, ow, 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 don't go there. That's not right, that's not authentic, that's not true to you. But in my mind, I was so convinced that's who I had to be. I was so convinced that was reality, right? I had to be sweet. I had to be nice. I had to be emotionally coddling. I had to be someone who was self-sacrificing at all times, and the whole point of me was to serve others. And anytime I was doing anything for myself or taking up space or taking up time, I was a horrible person, right? I had all this conditioning that seemed completely correct to me, to my logic, to my intellect. And right, I had been around people, because that's how that works, who all believed that, right? I wasn't attracted to people who wanted me to be a person, because I wouldn't have known how to behave around those people. I was always attracted to the people who absolutely wanted me to be a slave to them and wanted me, needed me to whatever. And it was these codependent relationships. And so my conditioning, my intellect, my patterns of being because of that all said, yeah, like, you're a tool for other people. That's the point of you. That's what you're here for. My Christianity told me that. My caregivers told me that. My friends told me that. And that was what I thought was reality, even though it was incredibly painful in my body to pursue that. It was incredibly painful in my emotions to pursue that. I kept getting really depressed and really anxious and self-harming and all of these things that were going on, right? Like, I was having to cope with this entire reality I thought was reality, because my intellect had been trained that that's who I was. But my body and my emotions were telling me it was wrong the entire time. But in order to listen to my body and my emotions, I then had to question, like, everything I intellectually believed about life. So it was very challenging and very hard. But learning to trust that when something hurts, there's something to be learned. When something is painful, no matter how logical and reasonable it seems to me, there might be something there that I want to look at. Because if it's hurting, it's probably not true, right? And I grew up as someone who believed that the harder something was, the more something hurt, the more true it was. Like, if I believed something terrible about myself, if I believed I didn't do good enough today and I wasn't good enough and I feel like shit about myself today because I disappointed people, and that really hurt. That was my emotional guidance system saying, that's not really true. You aren't here to be a tool for other people. You feel bad because you're telling yourself you should make everyone happy and do all these things, and these people have all these good reasons to be mad at you, and really they don't. That's what that anxiety or that pain was actually telling me. But when I would feel the pain, when I would feel shitty about myself, I'd be like, see, it's true, right? I feel shitty that I should have been this way. That feels shitty. And that shitty feeling is telling me that, yes, it's correct. I feel bad for a reason because I suck. Instead of, no, if it were really true, that would feel like freedom. Okay, so again, the truth doesn't always feel good. Sometimes the truth is going to feel like, oh my God, because like I said, so when I would go into these feelings and then when I really started to question it, you're like, okay, well, what if that's not true? What if that feels shitty because it's not true? It was like, oh my God, well then, who am I? How do I decide who to be? How do I decide what to do in a day? What am I supposed to be like in relationships? Whoa, right? My whole world crashes down, so that felt really scary. But the idea that I'm not here to be a tool for other people felt emotionally way more free. Even though I didn't know how to be that person. I didn't know how to live that life. I didn't know what that meant. I didn't know how to not be a tool. That, like, again, right, was my conditioning for my entire life. But it felt like freedom. It felt scary. It felt daunting. It felt confusing. But it felt liberating. And the pain of you feel bad because you suck because you weren't a good tool today felt terrible, but familiar and comfortable. And I knew how to fix myself and do all my coping mechanisms and do all these things so that I could keep being that person. You see? So breaking out of my conditioning and figuring out who I was first about feeling and learning to discern what I was actually feeling. And this is why I teach all this stuff in the emotional mastery, or my the emotional mastery series, in all my YouTube videos basically are on this, like learning to discern and connect with your feelings, because this is like, again, this is another reason why I say this unraveling of this conditioning is not something we do overnight. Because learning to really feel what your feelings are telling you, and then to learn from that, to like be like, okay, I'm gonna start behaving differently in my relationships, and it feels better inside, but then I get a terrible reaction outside, because all the people around me, like I said, right, are the people who were in alignment with my conditioning. So then when I start to change, they start to behave badly. They react poorly. They're not going to be happy about that, right? I'm stepping into my authentic self, and I'm actually genuinely getting attacked, or genuinely getting rejected, and genuinely my world is falling apart. But am I willing to keep going now that I'm an adult and let these relationships go, and maybe be alone for a while, and maybe have these like uncomfortable, scary experiences that again eventually lead me to more and more and more understanding what's right for me, and standing up for myself, and boundaries, and all these things, which then help me develop new patterns in relationships, and new relationships, and over time, like 2 or 3 years later, I have a whole new way of being. And it was just one little step at a time of following my feeling, and then my intellect figuring out how to do that. Okay, so again, it's not about letting go of the intellect. It's about really questioning, what am I feeling, and what am I telling myself about what I'm feeling? And if I think a different thought, does that feel better? Does that feel different? And then if I were to follow through with that, what happens? And yes, if it's scary and challenging and it kind of makes my life fall apart a little bit, maybe that's not a bad thing. Maybe that's part of my growth path, right? So this is why I say we're not going to intellectually figure out who we are, because our conditioning sounds true to us. Everything that we're telling ourselves makes sense to us. We have a whole bunch of stories and a whole bunch of reasons for why it's real. And learning to trust our feelings is incredibly challenging, because we're not going to have evidence for what our feelings are telling us in the beginning. We're not going to have evidence for what our feelings are telling us in the beginning. And we're going to have all this evidence to contradict our feelings. And when we start to follow our feelings, we're going to get backlash from the world around us. Right? Anyone who tells you that when you step into your authentic self, everyone just loves you and everything just falls into place and life is just amazing is wrong. Mostly what's going to happen is everyone around you is going to freak out, and you're going to be really lost and really confused and not really know who you are. You're going to just be realizing that things feel like shit, but you don't actually know what else to do, and you're trying to be your new self, and that feels shitty because it's different and traumatizing to your nervous system that knows how to do what you're doing in order to survive. And it's going to feel uncomfortable, and you're going to try a bunch of things that also aren't it, that also aren't real, that are just different, right? And it's going to be a confusing transition. But eventually, if we keep following and learning from our feelings, and we keep trying things, and we keep seeing that we're adults now, that we can get rejected, we can get abandoned, we can be alone a little bit forever. Or not forever. We can be alone for a little while. We can lose the things we thought if we lost them we'd die. And we can see that we don't. And we're going to have to go through that kind of purge of our lives a lot of the time. And the actual scary facing of our fears, where we do get abandoned and we do get rejected, and we have to learn to accept and be ourselves anyways, and go for what feels true anyways, and go for what feels right anyways. And sometimes we're wrong, and we learn from that, and then we try something else, and then we learn from that, and then we learn from that, and then we find the thing. And so, like I say, it's not that we don't ever find what's true for us. It's just that it's a process of trial and error, and letting things go, and facing fear, and going on the, right? So back to the kind of gym metaphor, that we're going to be pursuing growth, and pursuing challenging our ways of being, and challenging our thoughts, and challenging our behaviors, and challenging our patterns. And there are going to be days where it's just really, really hard, and really, really scary, and we lose people, and they get mad at us, and all these things happen, and we learn. We learn to be okay. We learn to be our own safe place a little bit more. We learn to set a boundary even though it makes people upset. We learn to be more authentic in this way. And over time, over long periods of time, we come more and more and more into, oh, this is who I am. Oh, that was my conditioning. Oh. We're just slowly reconnecting with our feelings. And just, again, it really just starts with, okay, if this feels like shit, I'm going to question it instead of believing I already know what it is and continuing to do what I've always done. If this feels amazing, but to my intellect, it's like, no, you can't do that, you can't be that, I'm going to question that. Right? We start to say feeling first, intellect second. Instead of saying, I am going to figure out who I am intellectually, because we're not going to. Our feelings are going to tell us first, and then we're going to figure out what the feelings mean intellectually. And then we're going to follow that, and then we're going to learn from it, and then we're going to feel something, and then we're going to figure it out, and then we're going to do it, and then we're going to learn something, and then we're going to feel something, and it's this continual cycle of learning. Okay? So that's why you're never going to figure out who you are. Because there's not a you to figure out. You're an ever-evolving thing. And you don't figure it out. You feel your way. You just keep feeling, questioning, feeling, and questioning. Because again, your conditioning makes sense to you. Who you think you have to be right now that is really painful to you, and then you have to cope and self-sabotage and numb and scapegoat in order to live that life, makes perfect sense to you. And you've been attracted to people and things and everything that have reinforced that idea. So when you start to break away from that, things are going to fall apart. And it's not going to be fun. And people are going to abandon you. And you're going to feel afraid. And you're not going to know what to do. And that's correct. And we have to go through that. We have to keep following the feeling, seeing what happens, trying it, questioning, following, trying, falling down, learning, getting abandoned, getting rejected, recovering, all of these things. And we feel our way forward. Then learn from it, then feel, then learn, then feel, then learn, and just questioning our thoughts. And if it feels like shit, it doesn't necessarily mean the opposite is true. Life is complex. So that's why I say this is a complex path. But if we let go of the idea that we already know, or that our intellect is going to already know, and we can start to say, okay, I'm going to go into the unknown here. If it feels like shit, there's something for me to learn. That's how we start to question our conditioning. And then it's going to be like, whoa, I didn't even see that, I didn't even see that, I didn't even see the things that were out of alignment. That was just normal and real to me. That was just how it was to me. And then I'm breaking away from it, and everyone abandons me. But then I find this whole new life on the other side of it. So that's what it is. Like, it's a lot of risk-taking. And it's a lot of, like I say, sometimes we have to go, like, just fully into that thing we think we're supposed to do. We fully embrace it and then realize we hate it. And it feels terrible. And then we have to let it go and then not know who we are. That's the other big thing. There's going to be a lot of just, okay, well, this feels like shit, so it's not who I am. It's not real, but I have nothing to replace it. And we have to be okay with that. We have to let ourselves go into that unknown. We have to allow ourselves to let go before we're going to see something new. All right? So that's that. I hope that was helpful. That's all I have to say today. Thank you for being here. You're awesome. You're perfect. You're whole. And you're always going to be changing, growing, and evolving. And you are worthy of the journey. Okay? And you're allowed to change. You don't have to be consistent. There's so much for you in this life. And the challenge doesn't mean you're doing something wrong. Sometimes life is just hard, and that's okay. All right? So love yourself, nourish yourself, comfort yourself, and then go out there. Do it. Be there. Right? Experience this life. Give what you can. Be of service where you can. Take care of yourself where you can. It's just a path. It's just a journey. There is no right or wrong way to do it. All right? Okay. I love you. You're the best. I'll see you next week. Mwah.